Hello and welcome to Reginald ESQ. I'm Underhook and this is my review of the Tier 6 German heavy tank, the VK36.01H. So is it any good? Yeah, it's a pretty good tank. It's different to the other Tier 6 heavies, quite different, and the stats are very deceiving on this tank. So it's a tank that really does need to be reviewed. Now it has 950 hit points, which is the second best in class. The best is the Churchill 7 that has 960, which is only 10 points more. Now bear in mind I am excluding the TOG 2 from my comparisons because it is so different to the other tanks that it just throws averages out the window. So I'm not going to use the TOG in any of the comparisons. The lowest hit points in class is the ARL 44 with just 820 hit points. Weight-wise, this tank is unusual for a German tank because it weighs just 42 tons, which is light for a Tier 6 heavy. The lightest is the Churchill, around about 41 ton, and the heaviest is the M6 at about 58 to 59 tons. So really avoid ramming any heavy tanks at all if you can. The speed of this tank, or the listed speed of this tank, is 50.5 kilometers per hour, which if you've driven this tank, that listed speed will probably make you laugh your head off because it's nowhere near the truth. Well, that's probably not fair. Downhill, it's pretty fast. Downhill on Al Haloof, I had this up to 65 kilometers an hour, which is pretty darn fast for a heavy tank. But on the flat, no way. On the flat on Himmelsdorf, the best I could get it to was 37 kilometers per hour on a flat paved road. Now, if I had a longer stretch of road, I could probably get it up to about 42 maybe, but I never found a long enough stretch of road to test it on because it accelerates so slowly. And it's slow up hills as well. So why? Well, because its power to weight ratio is terrible. So for example, the ARL 44, the M6, the KV85, the T150 all have better power to weight ratios than this tank, even though their top speeds are much lower. In fact, the ARL 44 is the next fastest tank, and that only has a listed speed of 37 kilometers per hour. But it would get to 37 kilometers an hour twice as fast as this tank and maintain the speed much better than this tank, go uphill better than this tank. This tank is, yeah, do not be fooled by the speed figures, they are fictitious. Its power to weight ratio is actually closer to the KV2 than any of the other tanks. So, the track traverse of 24 though is above average, so it does actually turn pretty well on its tracks. The best is the KV85 at 29 and the second best is the M6 at 25, so 24 is pretty good. The worst in class is the KV2 at just 17. Turret traverse of 25 is less than average, but it's not terrible. The best in class is the Churchill 7 with 31 degrees a second, and the worst is the ARL 44 with just 23. View range though on this tank is excellent at 370 meters. The next best is I think the Churchill 7 at 360, and the worst in class are the two Russians, the KV2 and the T150, and the ARL 44 also. They all share 330 meter view range, so it is one of the main advantages of this tank is its view range. Has also the best signal range in class at 710 meters, so you're never going to have a problem radioing your comrades. Camouflage wise, the tank is about average, much better than the KV2 and a little worse than the Churchill 7. The gun has 8 degrees of gun depression, which is very good and does enable the tank to hill fight pretty well, and has 15 degrees of elevation, which is also not too bad. The worst in class is the KV85 at just 3 degrees of gun depression, and the next worst being the Churchill 7 at just 4 degrees. And the best in class would be the ARL 44 and the M6, both have 10 degrees of gun depression. But definitely this tank is not hampered by lack of gun flexibility. It is quite flexible. Now let's have a quick look at the grind for this tank. Now I'm not going to go into the L70 gun because the WAF 0725 is far superior in every way to that gun, so I'm never going to bother talking about that gun. I'm just going to get this one up, and this one, which is you need to get the top turret before you can get the L56 gun, but I prefer actually to use this WAF 0725 gun, or WAF-A, or whatever they call it, compared to the L56, and I'll go into why. So 14.29 rate of fire is excellent, and I think if you're using this as your top gun, is better than any of the other guns on any of the other tier 6 heavies. It is the fastest firing gun. It's faster even than the Churchill 7's top gun. With 157 mils of penetration, it isn't great though. The Churchill has the lowest pen, I think, with 148 mils of penetration, but 157 would probably be the next lowest pen. So the pen's a little bit low, but it's not bad. I mean, it's still pretty good, and it didn't really cause any issues. 135 mils of damage though would make it the lowest damage gun. The Churchill gun would do 140 per shot. However, the slightly better rate of fire than the Churchill probably makes up for it. The accuracy of .34 is excellent for a tier 6 heavy, and this gun is really good for sniping. Combined with the long view range of this tank, can enable you to snipe quite effectively. The 2.3 second aiming time is also excellent and makes it a great one for even turning your turret or tracks and then firing pretty quickly. Now the top listed gun is the 88mm gun, the L56, and this has an 8.7 rate of fire, which is not real fast, and it only has 132mm of penetration, which does make it the worst penetrating gun of any tier 6 heavy tank, and it really does feel it. That's really a medium tank gun penetration level. It does 220 damage per shot, which is also not that fantastic. It's about average or a little bit below average territory for a tier 6 heavy tank. So low penetration and not great damage with a medium rate of fire, average accuracy of 0.38, but very good aiming time of 2.3 for a heavy tank. So I just found this gun really fires almost half the speed and does about half the damage of this gun, but combined with the lower pen means that sometimes you'll bounce this one when you won't bounce this one. So the WAF for me is the better gun. You're going to do more damage more consistently, in my opinion, especially at higher tiers, tier 7s and 8s. You got a much better chance of penning with a WAF gun. That said, yeah, with the WAF with premium, you can get 221 mils of pen. With the L56 with premium, you get 171. If you want to use premium exclusively, you could and do the higher damage, you could probably do that if you want to do that. But yeah, just be aware of that with the guns. It's that's probably one of the biggest issues about this tank, is the guns aren't great, or that they make it unusual. It really, if you use the WAF gun, it plays a lot like the Churchill 7 in that you're using it for sniping and relying on your rate of fire to damage tanks. Now this tank, we've mentioned the speed and all that sort of thing in a gun, but really, yeah, you can use it as a sniper or you can use it close up. Just bear in mind, if you are using the WAF gun, that close up, the armor does hold up pretty well, but that you're not going to be doing the same amount of damage, so you really don't want to be trading shots with your enemies. But if you can track them, you will hurt them, because your rate of fire, you can pretty much keep them tracked. Alright, let's have a look in Tank Inspector at the armor and then have a look at some gameplay. Whoopsie! My crew is 100% trained. The commander has 6th sense and is working on Brothers in Arms at the moment. The gunner has Snapshot, working on repairs. Is he a driver? I think he's a driver. He has off-road driving, working on smooth ride. Radio operator, situational awareness to boost view range, and he's working on repairs. And the loader has camouflage, working on repairs. I have a gun laying drive, a gun rammer, and vents fitted. And I have a small repair kit, large first aid kit fitted. So let's have a look at the VK in Tank Inspector. So you can see here the very lower glacis here is 60mm, but it's extremely angled and Buckleys have penetrated that. The other plate though isn't quite as well angled. In fact, it's not that well angled. It's okay, but it's 100mm thick, which is pretty good. So normally most people with German tanks aim at the lower plate because it's normally a weak spot, but on this particular one, for a tier 6 tank, that's actually pretty good at 100mm, and it's giving equivalent about 125, and if you angle it, it's coming up about 163. So a lot of people have trouble penning them, and I think one of the reasons, as you'll see in the gameplay, this tank bounces so many shots is because people see German tank, lower plate. What they don't realise is it's not a weakness on this tank, it's a strength. Now, the upper plate here is also 100mm thick, which is pretty good, but it's fairly flat, so it's easier to pen this than it is to pen the lower plate here. The machine gun port is not a weakness. So you can see the machine gun port there, it's the same thickness. This portion here, I guess I don't know if you call it upper glacis. No, not really. Anyway, this plate here, don't know what you call it, but it's 60mm thick. However, extremely heavily sloped. So very difficult to pen that unless you're kind of like shooting down on the tank, or you're very close and can shoot down on it somehow. Then you've got a good chance of penning it. There is a little section here in front of the driver which is actually additional spaced armor, so don't bother shooting at that. It's not a weak spot, it's a strong spot. Now moving on, sticking with the front of the tank, we'll have a look at the turret. So this section here around the mantlet, and I'm talking about that first because it also goes below the mantlet, is also 100mm thick, which is very, very good. Now a lot of the tier 6 heavy tanks have about 100mm on the turret, so it's not unusual, but it is welcome. On the outer edges here and the sides of the turret we see 80mm, and considering it's very heavily angled here and it's only a little bit here, it's pretty good, and no one's really going to be picking that off with any great ease. However, you will also see that the cupola, which does stick out, it is quite prominent, is 80mm, so that is a weak point, and people will aim for it if they know what they're doing. Now the mantlet here, we have 100mm of spaced armor overlaying the 60mm underneath, which is truly excellent. However, it's not consistent. So if we come down here we've got 135/60, which is awesome. But then we go over here and it's just the 135. So it depends on where you are. The closer you get to the gun, the more likely you are to just get the 135mm. But you'd be silly to aim for it since it's only 100mm down here. So realistically, if you're shooting at the front of this tank and you've only got the turret, you'll go for the cupola. Really, anywhere else, even this 100mm isn't that good, and the mantlet is very, very strong. So always go for the cupola if you can only see the turret, and bear in mind, don't bother aiming the lower plate, it's not a weakness. Aim for this plate here if you get the option. You can angle the tank though to increase the strength of that upper plate, but not too much, because the sides being 60mm aren't super strong. So you need to keep it around about this angle to keep it at its best angle. Too much angling here will enable an easy pen on the side. Talking about the sides of the tank, yeah, it's 80mm, and there's a bit of spaced armor here over the top of the, I'm not sure if the intake vents or exhaust vents, but so don't shoot this because it is additional armor. There is a very small weaker spot, but the spaced armor is just as thick as the normal armor, so just avoid those if you can. Sides of the turret are also 80mm, as is the rear of the turret, making this actually a very strong turret from the rear and sides. A lot of mediums and light tanks will still bounce off your turret even from the rear. The rear of the tank is also 60mm, which really, you know, it's not bad against some of the light sort of tanks. And the top deck of the tank is 25mm all around. All in all, quite capable and, well, really very good armor for a tier 6 heavy.
Let's get this show on the road.
The map is Highway, and it's a tier 6 game, so we're top tier. The enemy has quite a few heavy tanks, so I know there's going to be a strong presence of heavy tanks in town, but I'm heading into town anyway. As you can see, the tank accelerates quite well downhill, but in this game I actually only still have the first engine in it. I don't have the top engine yet. So as you can see, downhill, very, very fast, might as well be a medium, but you'll see as we start going uphill it starts to slow pretty quickly. Now the gun I have fitted is the WAF gun, or whatever you call it. You'll see it doesn't have a, I think you call it a muzzle brake, or a spreader, or whatever on the front. So that's how you can tell the difference between the two guns pretty easily. So this particular gun has 157mm of penetration, but only does 135 damage per shot. However, it does have a very good rate of fire. So you can see it's not doing too well. Now, to be honest with you, The upgraded engine, which goes from 400 to 500 horsepower, I don't think it's even noticeable. The difference in engine power. It should make a huge difference, but I couldn't even notice it. Anyway, we're on our way. Now, the good thing about this game is that part way through I do face off against another VK3601H who has the other gun, the I can't remember the name of it now, but the other gun that has does 220 damage per shot, but only has 132 mils of penetration, and we'll see how that goes. So just checking, looking around the corner as I go, just angling my tank as I can't go across here, so if someone was firing at me I had a reasonable chance of bouncing at least, and no one was there. So the enemy appears to have taken that side, but nowhere else at the moment. So I'm been playing long enough to know that you don't just drive straight around a corner when there's tanks waiting. So I'm getting into a side scraping position. So just exposing the angled side of my tank. Oops, a little bit too much, and I took a shot. I wore a shot from, was that the M6? Yeah, it was the M6. I didn't think they would be that far out from the wall, and I bounced the KV-85, but actually ate the shot from the M6 because I was too angled to them. Bounced another shot from the 85, and I just bounced my first shot from the VK3601H. Then we bounced another one from the M6, another one from the VK, another one from the KV-85. I missed completely with that shot, or maybe hit the wall. I bounced another one from the 3601H. Another one from the M6, and we put one into the KV-85. So you can see here the tank is side scrapping well. I'm re-angling my tank because the VK is coming after me, and I didn't want to give him too much of my side, and we managed to put one into his lower plate. The lower plate isn't that weak, but it is quite flat. We put another one in, we bounce another shot off the VK. Now we put one into the M6. So you can see this gun, the pen is quite acceptable, and the rate of fire is very good. I would say most of these guys would be quite surprised by the amount of shots I'm able to put out, and probably is throwing them off a little bit. If they all rushed me, they could probably do me in. Bounce some more shots, as you can see. You're going to have to guess how much damage I've bounced. It's going to be a lot. The VK again bounces off me. I'll put another one into him. Here comes the KV-85. That one I just managed to track the VK. I was actually shooting at the KV-85 and didn't realise the track of the VK was in the way. VK bounces off me again and we finish him off. KV-85 bounces off me again. We roughly aim at his cupola, do damage to him again. Now I've just been hit on the left hand side by a KV-2. So I take another shot at the KV-85. The KV-85 actually puts one into me this time because I'm tracked. I turn now to face the KV-2, bounce one off him just in time, and I think I bounced one off that M for the Easy 8 up there as well. Managed to get one into the KV-2 and bounce the KV-2. So you can see the armor on this tank is quite good. The Easy 8 appears to be shooting HE at me now. So I put another one into him and he does 54 damage from this time. I'm very low on health now. It's not looking good, folks. And a Hellcat sneaks up behind me and finishes me off. Oh well. So it was a Class 2 badge. We got, I think it's cool headed and high caliber badges for that game. We did get killed unfortunately, but the team went on to win. We were capping at the time that we were fighting there towards the end. Just got surrounded basically at the end there, but you can see the tank side scraps pretty well. Can you guess how much damage we bounced off our armor? Well, we finished obviously on top for damage, getting high caliber of course, and also on top for XP. And we did quite a bit more damage than most of the other players, so it was pretty good. Next screen, and we fired 19 shots. 17 of those hit and 17 penetrated. I think maybe one or two of those were just track damage, you know, but still pretty good result. And even though the gun is a low damage gun, it still does put out a lot of shots. 2076 damage we did. It does remind me a little bit of playing the Churchill 7 in that respect, although probably it's more maneuver, or well, it's faster anyway. We received 25 hits. 9 of them penetrated, and a couple of those would have been just track damage, bouncing 16 non-penetrations for a total of 3,090, not including what our tracks absorbed. So considering the tank has 950 hit points, that's pretty awesome. We spotted 3 tanks, damaged 5, destroying 1, and an income of 40,000, leaving us with 31,000 profit, which is pretty good. Ammunition's not expensive. And we got, oh gee, it's a bit smaller on my screen than it will be on yours, but I think it's about 884, is it, for a class 2 badge?
Let's go.
Alright, so this time my crew is fully trained, and this time we have the top gun, the 88mm gun. It's a tier 7 game. The enemy team has 4 tier 7 tanks and we have 3 tier 7s, although one of theirs is a tier 7 artillery, so it's fairly balanced. Now I've got the top engine now, so you can see the speed going up the hill here. Look, it's probably comparable to some other heavy tanks, I guess. It's not a disaster, it's just that when it's listed as being the fastest tank, you kind of expect a bit more, I guess. So yeah, the gun I have now, the 88mm, it does 220 damage per shot, but it only has 132mm of penetration, which isn't very good. Now, I might just speed this up a little bit up here, just to save some time. And I'll go back to normal speed again. So, just having a quick look here to see if there's any tanks waiting in ambush. Can't see anything popping up, so I'm just going to take a chance and push across. This is pretty aggressive play for a heavy tank. I do play quite aggressively normally, and it works well if you have a team that backs you up. If you don't, it can be a total disaster. In this case, I exchange a shot with Stug, and I'm angling my tank now. He still penetrates me though. I actually track him and don't pin him. He's now bouncing off me. I'm quite happy to exchange shots with the Stug because I know I can out-damage him. And we managed to eliminate him. My track is repaired, and I've just been hit by enemy artillery, which is not good. So I realise now I'm in a bad spot. I wait around to take that shot and then decide I better move up against this rock to avoid artillery. My team, I was worried, are not following me, but there is a tiger behind me, not far away, so at least I've got some cover to stop them coming up the sides and shooting me. But the gun depression isn't quite good enough to get shots down on these people. But I decided to take a huge risk here and push my tank over halfway over the edge, take the shot which fortunately hits, and pull back before the Type 58 can come up and take a shot at me. The Type 58 is now trying to get around this side, so I'm re-angling my tank. I managed to bounce the shot from the Type 58, just re-angled in time. I pull back now, hoping to pull back and side scrape and get a shot on this 122, but the Lorraine artillery hits me again. He's having a good day, so now I decide to move in and take a shot. I do fire at him and bounce off the top of the SU-122 there. I'm trying to get another shot into him before artillery shoots at me. I shoot, but somebody else's shot hits him just before mine does. So my health is pretty weak. Like I say, I was very aggressive. They're probably more aggressive than I should have been. And yeah, now in this instance I'm going on a slight downhill angle, so the tank is pretty fast. It's a bit like an IS-7. If you've ever driven an IS-7, it just flies down hills, but everywhere else it's not that quick. Okay, so we have a tiger there who's just broken cover. Aim at the lower plate, fire, and goes in nicely. Pull back, because for sure we've been spotted, and you can see my 6th sense goes off. Good, so my teammates are supplying really good backup, and one of them just hit that Hellcat. Pull back again to see, hopefully we'll spot. Remember, we have got good view range. We've got 370 meters as standard, and I have a radio operator with situational awareness, so we should have more than that. But I'm not spotting this tiger again. Now, if I had the other gun, I would just fire, because it's got good penetration, and I'd be pretty confident as long as I hit the front of the Tiger somewhere, I'll probably penetrate. But with this gun, I really need to hit the lower plate. I do fire anyway, as it turns out, and it looked like I missed. Now we can see him again. I fire at his side, but it doesn't pen. So now I'm trying to get his lower plate again. And he maneuvers before I can fire, and I hit the side, or the track. Fire another one. Don't know. He's dead now, but I don't know if that was my shot. Might not have been. Probably wasn't. So now I decide to move forward. I am on lower health, but we're winning by a mile. So if I want to do any more damage, I'm just going to have to move in. Their KV-1 bites the dust, and so does ours simultaneously there. So as you can see, tier 6 games, the armor on this tank does hold up well, but you know, if you're letting him aim, oh, payback! That was good. Always feels good to get payback on artillery. So now we're on a slight uphill rise, and whilst it still goes alright for a heavy tank, it's okay. It's just nowhere near the 55 kilometer an hour that it's listed as, or 50.5, whatever it is. And the Panzer III-4 allows us to shoot him twice, which is very nice of him. And they now have no tanks left. End of the game. Alright, well, I admit to being a little surprised at getting mastery for this game. We didn't do a heck of a lot of damage. However, did do decent spotting damage, and I think that's because we took an aggressive position at the front line, and we do have good view range for a heavy tank. So next screen, we obviously finished on top for XP and not top for damage. The Hellcat and the Tiger One both did more damage than we did. Not a lot more, but they definitely did more. So we fired 15 shots, 13 of those were direct hits, and of the 13 hit, 8 penetrated. So you can see here the low penetration on the gun did make a big difference. I'd say a couple of those shots we blind fired at the Tiger probably hit and bounced, and we also, some of the shots we actually saw fired at Tiger bounced as well. So against tier 8 tanks, it's a real problem, this gun. Damage of 1454 is not too bad though, and 548 of that damage was from long range. Hits received 5, 3 penetration, so we did bounce a couple of shots, so the armor is good. We spotted 3 tanks, damaged 5, destroying 3 of them, and we did 2,148 assistance damage, which surely did contribute quite well to us getting a mastery badge, especially since I think a fair bit of that would have been on tier 7 tanks. 46,000 income, very low expenses for a 38,000 profit, which it's a very profitable tank. So we got 1,176 raw XP, which is enough for mastery, which probably means there's not a lot of people playing this tank. I have used the tank in fact last night I used this tank in what do you call it, strongholds, and it actually, I used the WAF gun, it actually does alright. Yeah, it was pretty good. Thank you for watching my review of the VK3601H. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more reviews, please subscribe to Reginald ESQ. Have fun.